I'd like to start today with meditation. So let's settle in. And right here at the beginning, I want to invite you to check in with your body and your mind to see what posture you would really like to take during this meditation. There are 4, but there actually could be more. But just for the sake of exploring which posture the body and mind really would benefit from, would enjoy, whether it's standing or walking or lying down or sitting. And when you check in with your system, your body and mind, it needs to be with an open attitude, like kind of asking that question and waiting for the answer to come. And if right now the posture that's best for you is standing, then how would you like to stand? With your weight on both feet, or maybe with your hands on something like the back of a chair, or leaning against the wall. You can do meditation in any posture. You just want to be able to become settled and calm and relaxing. A posture where joy and happiness can arise. And if you decide to be walking, hopefully you can take your device with you and listen to the meditation instructions, but if not, that's fine too. When I do walking meditation, which I've been doing a lot lately, then I chant in my mind, Bhutto. They use Bhutto instead of Buddha because it's easier to have those syllables work better with like the Bhutto, the right foot, left foot, etc., whichever foot. Boot on one foot, do on the other. It's just a little bit, it's a nice rhythm. Sometimes I use Dhamma, Sangha, but mostly Bhutto. And you can try a different word or phrase, something to calm the mind, to engage the mind, to soothe the mind. You can walk slowly or quickly or just medium, but the awareness on the body, on the movements, helping the mind to settle. And if the right posture in this session is lying down, and you can lie in whatever position feels comfortable. You can lie on your back, lie on your side. The Buddha talked about the lion's posture, lying on the right side. You can put your head on a pillow, but it's really good to bend your knees regardless of the posture, so that your spine straightens out. This is because the energy can flow more freely through the body that way, and you might find it more comfortable. But the idea here is to really listen to the body. And to accept the fact that things are changing all the time. Having the same regimen, using it day after day can be helpful to establish our practice, but we also need to be able to observe what's happening now and adjust and support. Because what we really are wanting to encourage is that calm, that tranquility in the body and in the mind. Moving deeper into peace and happiness. And if the posture you're choosing is sitting, then be sure to sit comfortably in a way that your whole body can relax. And sit on a chair or sit on a cushion. Feel the support under your seat. Support your knees if you need to, whatever feels comfortable. Don't ever feel stable, solid. We want an attitude of friendliness towards our body and our mind, not an attitude of pushing or forcing at all. So I've just started retreat, as many of you know, and it's been a bit of a soft entry with a number of things to wrap up. And yet the time for meditation is gradually increasing more and more each day. And I've been really listening to my system and what is beneficial for the body and mind right now. And really using my walking path on the deck. It's been wonderful. Checking in after 30 minutes. How's it now? Do I want to continue? Do I want to go sit? Do I want to lie down? Standing, whatever the posture, whatever the focus of the mind. Mostly I focus on the breath because it's a friend. It's comfortable and I can feel the energy move through the body with the help, with the leading of the breath. And we each want to listen to our own system, to our own body and mind. And we can be creative with it. Sometimes the mind is supported by images that we might have come up, or some self-guidance in meditation. So just as an example, I'd like you to think about what it would be like to be in the ocean. I don't know if you've had that experience of being under the water, below the swell, feeling the movement. You might really feel your breath going in and going out. Imagine that you're under the water, but you can breathe without an oxygen tank. Just breathing with the movement of the water. There's a gentle push, current flow back and forth. Imagine being among the kelp and seeing it move with the swell of the water. And if this image isn't comfortable, change to a different one. But if you can feel peaceful and calm and comforted by this image, and stay with it. And the world underneath the surface of the ocean is so different. Beautiful, full of variety. And breathe in as the water moves towards the shore, and breathe out as it recedes, something like that. Really feeling one with the natural world around us. Really connected. Can even have that same experience just sitting in our usual meditation place in our home. Really listening to our body, noticing how it feels, bringing air in and out from our surroundings, connected to our environment. And maybe we're doing walking meditation outside or wherever we are. And this world is filled with energy. Everything has an energetic sense about it. And we can take that in. We can construct in our mind the environment that really is soothing and comforting and uplifting to us. The Buddha pointed us in the direction of peacefulness. That's really what we're looking for. What leads to peace and calm. What slows down the thinking mind. What helps to relax the body. What brings us joy. And being here in the present moment, listening. And there's a kind of joy that arises from that. And also when we start to feel some spiritual energy uplift. Sometimes it's good to just smile. Sometimes you might find yourself spontaneously smiling in meditation because of the beauty of it, the peace, the joy. And the Buddha encouraged us to notice that peace and joy. Because where we put our attention, that's where things blossom. We observe those sensations in the body that are pleasant. We're likely to experience more of them. Spread, perhaps, without trying, without having any kind of goal, other than to lean in or incline towards peace, towards happiness, towards tranquility. Letting go of trying. Letting go, perhaps, of our habits. Now, when we're listening, when we're available to this present moment, then we have this opportunity to learn. to change our routine, our plan, our maps that we use to navigate. We can update our way of doing things. And now we're going to bring the meditation to a close. It's going to be the noble, no bell meditation ending. So I'm going to talk for a little bit, but I also want to leave a little time for questions. I've been really enjoying freedom of schedule here as I start the 3-month Vasa. And these ideas of adjusting our practice or really paying attention to how our body and mind are doing, and then responding to that information. And of course, it's helpful to have more tools, but sometimes we have to create some new tools too. And if we can learn from each other, that's great. And that's one of the beauties of being in Sangha. So I've been really checking in with myself as I'm practicing, and playing with continuous practice, like what it's like to meditate while you're doing whatever it is you're doing. When I think about Ajahn Ganha talking about having samadhi all the time, sati, mindfulness, samadhi, and wisdom, panya, all the time. And when you think about that, or when you experience it, play with it, then what does it feel like? How do you know that you're meditating? And for me, I can really feel the feeling in my body. And oftentimes it has to do with the breath, and it has to do with how much calm there is in the mind while I'm washing the dishes or taking a shower or cleaning something or just doing walking meditation, sitting. The movement from one thing to another can start to become quite smooth. And the ongoing kind of quality, or the place I'm putting my attention, is listening. And a lot of times we'll talk about watching the breath. But right now I've been listening more than watching, listening to my body. It's listening, but it's feeling. What is the feeling? What is the feeling that tends towards peace and calm? And then if something comes up in the mind that brings some agitation or a little stress or something, then listening to that too, listening to that feeling and noticing, okay, this requires some attention. What do I want to do with this? And there was a point early this week. So we started the Vasa officially on the day you're supposed to, which I think was Sunday evening, as a community entering the Vasa. And then Monday, Tuesday, I saw 3 recurring themes coming up in my mind. So, we have these patterns of thinking. And then what do we do with them? And it depends on what they are. So again, listening, kind of listening and feeling into it. So with one of the patterns, it was about a series of events and interactions. And I decided that I would do some journaling, just writing down everything I could remember and writing down my impressions of it, my thoughts, my reasoning. And it was very helpful. One of the things that we were taught when I was in seminary was something called the journal workshop. And I haven't used that format or system in years, but I remember learning about different ways of journaling was very helpful. So I found that this exercise of writing about this thing that kept coming up in my mind was really helpful. It really laid that whole topic to rest. And the second theme that was coming up, because of its content, what was helpful was bringing up compassion, karuna, and practicing with the Brahma Viharas. This is another thing, we can listen to our own heart, and we can use the Brahma Vihara that's appropriate to bring relief. And more than relief, it pulls in and encourages the mental state, the attitude of the mind, of the heart, that really has forward movement into greater loving kindness, joy, equanimity, compassion. And so I found that really brought a level of contentment around this particular topic. And the third one wasn't as persistent, but it was still there, coming up repeatedly. And that one was simple, and I knew that I just needed to say no. And whenever I gave that thought energy, I knew I was setting myself up for it to arise again. And every time I said no to it, because it's one of those things where I already know that, I know from experience that when that kind of thought arises, it just leads to kind of developing an obsessive thinking cycle that has no learning potential at all. and it can just say no to it. And I really saw the benefits of applying these methods and letting the mind empty and become more peaceful and freer. And of course, excuse me, of course, things change constantly. And this is why it's so valuable to keep coming back to pay attention to what we're feeling and to what we're hearing. And I want to share something that I listened to on a program called Hidden Brain. And maybe someone can put this in the chat. This is from Hidden Brain. You can go to hiddenbrain.org. And this episode of it is called Changing Our Mental Maps. It's an interview conducted by Shankar. I think his name is maybe Vedanta Shankar. Interviews people talking about different things related to the way our brains work. And the person he interviewed in this case, his name is Norman Farb. And he's a psychologist and neuroscientist. And he was talking about how we develop these maps, these mental maps. And, one example that was given is, like if you're driving somewhere to a new place, then you're constantly having to look at, where do I turn? And, have to pay very close attention to the route. But if you do that a number of times, then you start to just notice landmarks. Okay, when I get to that building, I have to turn left. And when I see that tree or whatever, and then that's the place where I have to turn. And then after, if this is some, like you're, starting a new job and you go through that process, and by the time you're into the second month, you don't even have to think much before that, probably. You don't even have to think about the route. It's already embedded as a kind of habit in your mind. And this is what the mind does. The brain is set up to have these mental maps to help us survive. We have these programs in us that help us to not have to think about every detail all the time, and also a selection of responses to things that happen and that we draw upon. The problem, of course, comes when we don't update the mental maps. So this person, Norman Farb, he was talking about some testing they were doing. They're working with observing the activity of the brain depending upon, what a person is experiencing. And they would, have them in an MRI machine and notice where the brain is active. And they were wanting to know if they could identify if a person was experiencing depression. And they were thinking that that maybe this kind of kind of giving people something sad, a sad story to observe or listen to, would cause more sadness to arise. And they wanted to see how that would happen. It does, in fact. What they find is that the brain, I've heard this before, the brain stimulation is the same whether we're experiencing it or we're just watching it or listening to it or reading about it. So, you know, when you hear something sad, the example they used is a mother who's about to die saying goodbye to her children. And it's a very sad kind of experience, and what feelings arise in us as we hear that. And they had expectations about what someone who's dealing with depression would, how they would react to that. And what they found was that they were less, there was less activity in the brain around that feeling of sadness than they would have expected. They expected it was dulled, or not so present. At least this is how I recall it. And what Norman said was that they also know what parts of the brain are activated when you're having feeling in the body. So, like the Buddha talked about these different, you know, physical feeling and mental feeling. And physical feeling in the body, of course, is what we feel on our skin mainly, or sometimes internal to the body also, but it's the material or physical body that's producing that feeling. But if we're having an emotional experience, then we also have feeling that arises in the body. And actually, that's a different part of the brain that is active, and they know the difference. And so the difference that the Buddha was talking about, in fact, I just see all of these things as related to the Dhamma and the way the Buddha talked about things. Like, you know, we're talking about these mental maps that get created. These are sankharas. And the Buddha talks about, you know, the fragility of those, the constant changing of those, the instability in you know, like not substantialness of those. And anyway, when they were looking at the results of what was happening with people who were experiencing depression, the results weren't what they expected. So they started to look at what was going on in other parts of the brain, not just this default mapping kind of area of the brain. And what they found was that if you're experiencing depression, that area where the sensations of our emotions that we feel in the body shows up was kind of shut off. So sometimes when we talk about, you know, feeling in the body, when you have anger, when you have sadness, when you have fear, and some people say, I don't know what you mean. And it might be because of whatever conditions they've experienced or are experiencing that causes that to be depressed, that causes that to be kind of blocked off. And so this, the idea that they talked about in this program was about paying attention to our felt sense and how we can kind of awaken that ability. And so it's like really, it's the way of practicing mindfulness, being more aware of what's really happening in the body and mind, and then not just following our habitual way of responding, just that automatic response. Sometimes it's applicable and correct, and sometimes it's not. We get caught up in perceiving things a certain way. We get, you know, because we're perceiving things and holding things in a certain way, that's what we then perceive in agreement with our idea more and more. We recently had a situation where we were able to observe about 40 people in their reactions to COVID. And it was really interesting to see the wide variety of the way people are relating to COVID at this point. Some people really, it feels like, for various reasons, relating to COVID still as if we were at the height of the pandemic. Other people completely, kind of living their life as if COVID doesn't exist, and everything in between. And we can, this is not to say, what's actually appropriate. It's like hard to know. I mean, certainly people are still getting COVID. Certainly it's still possible to get long COVID. But there's also something that things keep changing. So the question is, our impression of the degree of risk that we take, does it really match the reality of the risks that we take? And is it possible to even know? Because we also all have karma. I might do something and someone else might do the same thing, and one of us has trouble with it and the other one doesn't, and it often is related just to the causes and conditions that come to play. And we don't know. So the question, the encouragement, I think, from the Buddha certainly, is that when we really see reality as it is, with all of these, that I feel like the neuroscience is really validating the way that Buddha talked about reality. That we do have this very useful tool, these tools, the body and the mind, the way the brain works. We are able to experience what's around us and to bring wisdom to it and learn how to evaluate and hold what's happening and respond from a place of Dhamma. And that, we have this ability to update our ideas of the way things are based on what we're experiencing and the wisdom from Dhamma. So this idea of coming fresh to our relationships, coming fresh to our work. What is it that it's really in need of today? And how can I show up paying attention and providing care and maintaining my openness to listen and to serve. So I'd like to hear what you have to say. I'm not sure how coherent or incoherent that might have been, but I think it relates to some of the things people were sharing before we started recording around how to adjust the practice and the need to adjust our practice and the need to adjust the way we approach things in life. Any comments? Questions? Yeah, Lynn?
Yeah, I recall seeing a documentary about Ruth Denison. And many people said she had very unconventional ways of teaching the Dhamma, and often did a lot of dance in her getting people to. But some of that is because she taught a lot of women who had gone through traumatic experiences and maybe weren't in their body as much as they could. And some of what you said made a lot more sense when you think about things that take you away from the feelings in your body, women that have experienced rape or some sort of traumatic experiences where you disconnect a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you regain that being able to feel your body, I guess?
Yes.
So
Exactly.
in my mind, she went from being a little kooky to really being wise in
Mm-hmm.
being able to help people that were in a difficult spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Lynn. It's so great that we have so much access to information, but we need to also learn how to filter through that. And it's great when we see things that we don't understand to just see, well, how's it working? You know, is there some, and like you said, Lynn, the reasons why people might need a different approach can really be varied and important. Long.
There's something that I've been wanting to ask you for a long time. How do you do your meditation?
Well, I mean, a lot of times this is a question that teachers don't even want to answer, but I'll give you an answer. I usually do Anapanasati, and that's been my standard for many, many years. But it's fresh also. It's not just following 16 instructions at all. It's understanding what's behind those instructions and using the ones that make sense in the moment. And using the breath as a way to bring energy into and through my system, and how to calm the body and mind, and to recognize that what we're inclining towards is this complete peace and relief, and seeing if what we're doing is actually moving in that direction. And the number of hours of meditation a day can vary, and the style that we do it can vary. And I know there's a lot of encouragement to not jump around from one technique to another, and that's also important advice, especially in the beginning before we have gone very deep, because you want to be able to go deep in your practice. And so sometimes people just skate on the surface by sampling different things, and that's not helpful, but that's not what we're trying to recommend here. It's more about understanding how to let the mind sink in more deeply. And we have to work with the mind that we have. So I like the way Ajahn Chah taught. He would say, you just go in, and if you kind of get stopped at a certain point every time, then at that point, start reflecting on Dhamma. And then you reflect on Dhamma, and then maybe you can move back into Samadhi. And it's like back and forth. Sometimes you'll hear that instruction. So know what you're headed toward and see what helps you move in that direction. Ridding yourself of the hindrances and bringing more tranquility and peace, and reflecting on Dhamma so that wisdom arises. That's really the basic idea. James.
I suppose in practice, like you say, you have to sort of be paying attention and adjusting things. I'm not sure how to put this. I mean, I did a little talk the other week on right effort, so I've been worked out quite nicely. So I've been thinking about that a lot recently. It's there's a difference, because sometimes when I'm meditating, I kind of feel like I'm just sort of like just feeling things out and just trying to see if I'm in that direction, is that a little bit nicer? Is that a little bit more calmer? And sometimes that seems, it's very subtle, like and it's almost like just sitting and doing nothing sometimes, and just almost waiting patiently to see what's going to happen. And yet, since the beginning of my practice, I've also had great success with really deliberately giving like reflecting on the Buddha Nasati. That's been a common part of my practice from the beginning, particularly when I do walking meditation. When I do walking meditation, it's less about calming the mind, it's more about bringing up positive thoughts in a very active way. I'm not just sort of sitting waiting to see what would arise or see which direction things are going. It's very active. So I've always had that sort of feeling, because I've heard people say, you shouldn't strive, you shouldn't put effort, you shouldn't be doing, pushing yourself too much in this direction or that direction, just being open to what is. So there's just like, I'm kind of rambling now, aren't I? But it's that tension between just being what is with what is, but actually taking the mind in a wholesome direction as well. I think that's sort of hard to feel out, because sometimes I think you just need to be with what's there, but other times a real active effort to really push the mind in the right direction is the right thing. But it's like, what do you do?
Yeah. That's why I guess what I'm trying to say is it's so much of it's intuitive, but we have to also like practice to understand how to use these different approaches. And I like what you said, you've had really good experiences with bringing up that Buddha Nisati. And I mean, to bring up energy and to really apply ourselves is valuable. We have to see how that's going. And I think the gauge is really like the results, and we have to give it enough time. We have to give it enough so that we get skilled at using a certain approach, and then see what the results are. And not that we're checking constantly, because that would be a kind of agitation also. So yes, it's true. It's like trying to teach someone how to be a really excellent cook and know exactly what spices to put in when. And you can only learn so much from the instructions. Then you have to really feel it and go with what you feel is right.
And there is no concrete answer, is there? It's just, I don't know. I just know that some days it almost feels like, oh, I'll try this. Oh, that didn't work. Well, it worked yesterday. Why is it not working now? And then, oh, I'll try it. Oh, that isn't working either. Like I'm just pulling in these things, and I'm really trying to just shove the brain in the right direction and everything. And yeah, oh, I don't know. I'll get there.
Yeah, and then maybe it's time to just really see if there's a way to let go of all of it.
I think sometimes nowadays when I sit, I just sit with no expectations, with doing nothing, just being with everything patiently, and sometimes that does the job.
Yeah. Thank you, James. Jarrell?
One of the things that was coming up for me as I was listening to James was I was wondering if the approach of treating my mind and my body as if I'm like a plant in the seasons of life, like winter, spring, fall, like the plant is expressing itself differently through each season. Sometimes my leaves will blossom when it's fall or spring and fall, and then it can feel like I'm dead when it's winter, or like nothing is moving. It seems as if there's nothing that's moving, but it can feel like there's a lot that is still happening in winter, that is growing in winter, but to the eye it can look like it's dead. So I'm wondering if that is a healthy approach to experiencing the shifts in my own energy, or what I experience throughout the weeks or months rather, if that's a healthy approach to work with.
I think that I think what I'm hearing is it healthy to think about it in that way? And it certainly can be. Knowing that our mind really benefits from metaphor and imagery. Sometimes it depends on the particular mind we have. And, to recognize, kind of learn or discover how we learn and how we, what is inspiring, what is clarifying, and make use of those approaches. I feel like in some ways, this exploration that we're making during this session can maybe bring up more questions than answers. And maybe that's okay. That we recognize that in many ways we're similar to each other and similar to the disciples of the Buddha all the way back to his time. So many things that we share, but we also have these differences. And to be appreciative and accepting of those differences and willing to work with them, and also the changes in our life. I mean, I like your metaphor, Jarrell, because that's how nature is, those changes, and we do go through those changes as we move through our life. And something that was brought up earlier about, what if we're going through a period where we're dealing with maybe some chronic fatigue or some health challenges, and feeling through what effects different medications might have on our system, and recognizing that it's not like there's a formula we can apply that's going to solve all of the challenges, but that we can really do our best to look at, maybe I don't even want to say do our best. How do we know what that is? But we really lean in the direction and always think in terms of, how can I learn from this, and how can I bring more peace and calm? And really, like I really appreciated what was shared at the beginning of our time together around, finding this energy method that really is helpful, and realizing that, using the same approach for many years, and feeling like it's kind of not really working at some point, and shifting what we're doing is really a valuable application of our own willingness and our ability to be in the present moment and see what's possible. When in the situation I was just describing, I think about the mindfulness-based stress reduction approaches that help people, to really be able to slow down and observe what's happening inside, and to bring attention to the moments when we're free of pain, to the moments when we are feeling better, and encouraging the mind to really touch into those times, and to notice what the conditions are that are helpful. Seeking out an approach, or sometimes seeking out other people experiencing the same kinds of things we're experiencing, to see what has been valuable as they've been learning from the conditions that they have. Yes, Karishma?
Yeah, I think I can relate to that because with all the experiences that everyone shares here, I think it's helped relate a lot more to it and kind of apply it in my own kind of, at least in the whole of last week. And there was also something that I felt about it not having an agenda. So it really frees you up when you don't have one. And I think because I was just calmer and happier, I didn't have that at work. And I realized that I was just enabling other people a lot more. And I was just kind of happy to let them shine. But in the process, I landed up getting a lot more in return, which I didn't even expect or need. And I think that it just made life a lot simple this year.
I'm having a little bit trouble understanding. The sound is a little bit difficult, but I think I got it. Thank you. Thank you. So I think we'll come to a close for today. I wish you all a good week, and see what happens next time. Okay, thank you, everyone.